For the record, I don't have anything I have to set straight. It is what it is. So if you think it might not be true, but what doesn't matter.
What's up, geniuses? I'm Rob Markman, and welcome back to For the Record. Now, if you may have noticed, we took the show on the road, outside of our record room, outside of the Genius offices. Sometimes you have artists so special, so iconic, you just got to do something different, okay? And today's guest is an 11-time Grammy Award-winning singer, songwriter, musician, okay? He's written and produced over 26 #1 R&B hits. He's starting a new music publishing group, Good Vibes. Man, that man, the myth, the legend, Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, man. What's going on?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
I'm good. Doing great.
Yeah. Thank you for just giving us your time and allowing us in your studio. Brand this way. This is where the magic happens.
Yeah, this has been here for 21 years at least.
Wow.
Something like that.
And the studio is named after your son?
After my son, yeah.
Is this the same son? Now you had a record back in the day, Day.
Same son.
Okay, and you wrote a whole record about the day that you found out that you're going to be a dad and your son?
Yeah. Same kid, same studio.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So thank you for having us here, man.
Sure.
Truly just walking down the halls, and I wish we could show you guys, just walking down the halls, you see all the plaques on the walls and just realize the history and the legacy that you've created within music is truly amazing. Does it ever dawn on you like what you've done, or are you the type of person who's always focused on tomorrow and what you're doing in the moment?
I'm kind of usually just focused on tomorrow. I don't. It's cool to see it. It's not like I walk down that hallway and go wow. So you just, and I think that's kind of like how you keep going as long as you kind of look towards the future. I've seen over the years, some of my people that I've worked with or worked around, they'll have success on something and they'll kind of just harp on that, and then they'll miss the rest of the future for them because they'll be like, I did this, and not thinking about doing anything else. So I think for myself, and even for even LA, when we were working together, we always kind of missed celebrating it at the time because we were always working for the next thing.
Do you ever get to celebrate at this point? You haven't celebrated yet. You don't look like the celebrating type.
No. I mean, we'll go cool, have a drink, say cool, and then move on. That's just not kind of like who I've been, and I'm comfortable with that. It's I think at this particular point, it's a little bit more of celebrating is more of kind of taking time and having time with family and being able to go out and do some trips and stuff with the family and stuff like that, because I still work as much, and because this is part of my life. This is what I enjoy doing.
This is what you're doing. And it feels like you might start working more harder than ever at this point. You got a new venture that you started, a music publishing group, right? Yeah. Good Vibes Music?
Good Vibes Music.
Tell me about it.
Well, it's a thing that I'm doing with my partner, Jason Murray, and we kind of met and we're kind of interested in the same things. And, I've been, since I met Jason, I've been kind of like going out and doing more co-writing than I've done before, and writing with a number of people that, younger people that I hadn't like gone in with, like from writing with h.e.r. and h.e.r. and Daniel Caesar and other writers, producers from Monsters and Strangers, and to James, Fauntleroy, and just working with people that I hadn't really kind of worked with before, and it was fun, and it just kind of inspired me to want to find other younger writers that are still wanting to write music and care about lyrics and care about melody, and that was so we kind of decided to kind of go after it, and this is the beginning of it.
What are some of the ways that you find, because there used to be a traditional way to break into the music business. Yeah. There were like roads that were well traveled and you could follow blueprints. And I feel like in this era now for musicians of all types, songwriters too, that the walls have broken down. Like you can really find talent anywhere. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily come to you. A lot of times it just might be in somebody's bedroom. With Good Vibes, how are you going about seeking out new talent and fostering new talent?
And then all those ways as well, you know, kind of word of mouth, but then, you know, through social media, we made it possible for people to send us their music so we could kind of go through those that kind of stood out. And we've had a couple of writing camps. We had a writing camp here in LA. We had one set for Atlanta, but we're going to actually still do it here at the studio because it worked out well. And then we actually did one in Nashville at, you know, the Secret Genius studio there, which was very cool, and met some really incredible, you know, talent there. And it's different because it's like there's a difference between how the writers work there in Nashville opposed to how they work here. You know, it's a different mentality, I think, which makes it interesting, makes it fun.
And then you mentioned Atlanta too, and it's so amazing to see, you know, especially for this generation, especially in the hip hop generation, Atlanta has become the hub of just culture and trends. And, you know, it's been like that for some years, but, you know, you and LA set up shop in Atlanta when it was very new. And a lot of what's going on today, you guys helped build that foundation in that city for what's going on right now.
Yeah, we're proud of that, of, you know, kind of getting a little credit in terms of driving the traffic there and making it become kind of the music mecca it is for that it ultimately became, that, you know, whether we were there or not. When we went down there, I can't say that we knew exactly that that's where it was. To be honest, we kind of like picked the place where you want to go. And fortunately, you know, it was Atlanta, and it certainly made the difference in terms of our careers.
What's the vibe like in that city? If I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it might have started working with Whitney down there. Like Whitney was working on the album, and it was just like, man, let's just get away and tuck off. But there was a vibe. There was a certain magic that
when we went there, we initially went there because it was affordable housing. We could buy a house, and we wanted to start a company where we were like, you know, the big fish in a little sea. And we felt like if we started here or started in New York, you know, we were going to get, you know, swallowed up. So when we went there, it was just there were a couple of people that we knew. We knew Dallas Austin,
right,
you know, ahead of time before we went down there, and so we knew there were other producers that we'd be able to work with as well. And we immediately got down there and started trying to find acts. And while we were there, we were also, you know, that is where we recorded Whitney for the first time, which was in the house studio at LA's house that we had, a place called La Coco.
Right.
So, and it was great.
Yeah, man, and the results were great. So, you know, going back to Good Vibes, man, what do you look for? You know, you've written so many and produced so many hit records, and not even hits, because you can find things on the charts, but records that really stuck with us and surpassed generations, timeless records, so to speak. When you're looking at new writers, like, what are some of the things that make you still, you know, the hair stand up on the back of your neck, on your arms? What do you look for in new writers when the magic happens?
More of just whether they have a sense of melody and a sense of clever lyrics, things that can either clever lyrics or something that, you know, that touches you, that goes to the heart. All those things are part of it. So if you're talking about top line writers, or if you're talking about what you rarely find is someone that does it all, someone that can, you know, play the piano, play the guitar, program, sing, produce. That's it's exciting when you find that person that can really do it all and still be a musician, you know, that actually can play instruments and doesn't have to rely totally on just the computer and what you can find in terms of putting samples together, which is an art within itself. I'm a little traditional, and like I like to see both of those worlds working together, because I think if you can create it yourself, you know, then it gives you more room and more places that you can go.
You mentioned Star, you mentioned James Fauntleroy. Who are some of the other writers, creators that you like in this new generation that gets you excited? What gets Babyface excited?
Well, you know, it's I don't listen to everything. I don't always listen to the people bring things to me that they tell me to check out. You know, the kid that I've been working with, Christopher. Rick Tyne. He's been here for years, and he always kind of like, so you should check out this and check out that. So, so like he's kind of like my gauge many times in terms of what I'm looking for, and not even so much looking for, just in terms of just what's out there and what's good. And there's a lot of nice things that are happening, and initially I was introduced with Daniel Caesar, and I couldn't believe just how much soul and just heart that he had to it, and the voice was just kind of ridiculous, and then just as impressed about his approach in terms of not just the melodies but the lyrics and how he approaches things in a different way. And I saw that that's like a today's real artist, and it's we haven't got a lot of that, in the past few years. So, but I see that changing, and I see people are growing, and he does something great for like the R&B, the new R&B, so to say, because like it's not about him being pop, it's about him being himself, or whatever that is. So.
That leads to my next question. This is strictly just my opinion, and I wonder how you feel about it. But Daniel Caesar is one of those artists that represent R&B in a very, love songs, right? And I felt like you wrote a lot of songs that, our generation either might have been their first school dance, might have been their first kiss, their first date, conceived their first baby. So Babyface song. So it was very much about being in love and the trials and tribulations of love. And I feel like in this generation, we don't get as much as that. It feels more like lust in R&B. What's your take on the new generation and what's going on as a whole? And maybe how do we get back to the love?
Well, I think that's what's happening, is that now you're having artists like a Daniel Caesar or like a h.e.r. And people, and even more than that, I can't think of all the names at this point, but they're actually exploring love in their way. It's still a little bit more edgier than we would have done it back in the day, but not like we didn't want to do it. You just couldn't do it. Right. But every now and then you get a curse word would be perfect for something, but you just couldn't do it. But now you can. And that doesn't throw me off. Actually, sometimes it's the best way to say it. But I think what's happening now is that in music and in songs, it's finally getting to a point where you're allowed to be vulnerable again, and there's nothing wrong with that, And actually, it's cool, And so for that to be cool again, that's a good thing.
You say vulnerable, and I had this question. It was going to come further down the line, but it's something that I always laugh at. And you are a master at that. Boys to Men, were very vulnerable, down on bended knee. Right, yeah. End of the Road. Something that always makes me laugh in End of the Road, obviously about a breakup, is when they come on, and we don't even get this anymore. Kind of the spoken word part in the middle of a song, and he says, "Baby, I knew he was out there with that other guy. Right. I just didn't care." Right. I didn't get that. I felt like I would care. After that, it would be the end of the road. Was that freestyle, or how did that record kind of come about?
That was pretty much freestyle. Michael just kind of went for it, and it was not something that it was old school back then to do it. So nobody did that back then, but it felt like such an old school song that I thought it would be. We thought it would be fun to do that, and it actually worked out very, very well. Where it didn't start a trend where everybody started doing it, because they kind of owned that themselves. But it was fun though.
It definitely made them special. You knew you was always gonna get that spoken word interlude, the deep, bassy voice. The Quiet Storm voice, baby.
Exactly.
No, that's an amazing record. I want to go back to the beginning with you, because there's a funny story. You probably told it a million times, so forgive me. But I'm sitting here as a journalist interviewing you, and you, in a weird sort of way, kind of started your career, got your foot in the door as a journalist in the 8th grade. Interviewing the Jackson 5. Like, this is such a, in this generation, we'll call it a finesse. It was a hustle, man. Yeah. You really hustled your way in the door. You mind telling that story?
It was a hustle. It was, when I first saw the Jackson 5, I saw them when I was in 6th grade. And it was the very first concert that I had ever gone to. Which is funny, I think with Justin, you told me that his first concert was me, Boyz II Men,
Brandy.
Yeah. And he was in 4th grade. And I'm like, that shows me how old I am. Anyway, so, but my first concert, I was in 6th grade. And when I saw them on the stage, they came to Indianapolis, Indiana, the Coliseum. And I saw them I couldn't believe it when they actually walked on the stage. I had a terrible seat. I was in the back of the stage watching the back of their heads most of the time. I could only see their faces when they would spin. Other than that, it was really just kind of the feeling of the room. And I was just in awe. I think I was sitting there watching. I had tears coming down my face, just couldn't believe that they were there. And that these little black kids were like making this crowd go crazy, like the Beatles. I mean, I used to watch the Beatles, and it was like watching the Beatles. And the crowd was so loud you could barely hear the music. It hit me at that point that that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to somehow be involved in music, and it also hit me at that point that one day I wanted to meet them. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I said I have to meet them one day. Interesting enough, a couple of years later, when I was in 8th grade at the end of my school year, I looked in the newspaper and saw that Jackson 5 were coming to the city again, and I was like, I gotta meet them. And so I came up with this idea to call the promoter, because in the newspaper is that the promoter was this guy named Charles Williams, and so I looked up every Charles Williams in the phone book. That's when we used to have phone books. And
follow along, guys. It's an amazing story.
We never had phone books. And so I looked at every Charles Williams in the phone book, and it was a bunch of Charles Williams.
Had to be.
Yeah. And I called every one of them until I reached the Charles Williams, the promoter. And then when I finally reached him, found out first I had in one voice, I reached him, and then I kind of just hung up. And then I called back probably about 30 minutes later, and I called as a guy named Mr. Clayton, which was my journalist teacher in school, which he actually just taught English. I just called him a journalist teacher. And so I used his name, and I used a voice that I used to impersonate all the time. I was a big Jimmy Stewart fan. Mm-hmm. And so I used my Jimmy Stewart impersonation to act like an adult. And I talked to Charles and asked him if, I heard that you got this young group coming in, or the Jackson something. He says, the Jackson 5. I said, yeah, that's the group. And so I'm interested. I wondered if you would have an interest in kids, interviewing kids. He said, that's a great idea. What are you thinking? He said, well, I have these kids that are really, really interested in, this kid, I think it'd be great if it could happen. He said, well, tell you what, Mr. Clayton, why don't you give me your number, and I'll give you a call back, and I'll let you know whether I can make that happen. Then I said to him, well, I think what would be better is I'm going to give you the name of one of the kids. His name's Kenny Edmonds. I'm going to give you his number, and you should call him. He could handle the whole thing. And I want him to do it like a real journalist. He said, even better. So he said, I'll give him a call right now. I said, that would be great. So I gave him my number, and he called back in 5 minutes and said, I'm Charles Williams, I'm the promoter, and your teacher, Mr. Clayton, told me to call you. And I acted surprised. Mr. Clayton, oh my God, what did he say? Well, he wants to see if you might be interested in interviewing the Jackson 5. I said, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. He said, well, give me a week, and I'm gonna call you back in a week. And so I had to stay by the phone at my house, because if my mom knew that I had lied and I had approached it that way, then it would have never happened. So I was on guard duty on the phone for at least a week. And finally he called, and he said, you got the interview. It's gonna happen. Wow. And he said, a week from now, on a Saturday night, if you get down here around 5 o'clock. No, it was around about 3 o'clock, I guess. You come down and you get to see the guys. And I was like, couldn't believe it, and I was like kind of losing it. And then I called a friend of mine named Malcolm Gregory and his sister, Tina Parsons. She is the one that actually took us down there. We took our little cameras with us and went to the Hilton Hotel. I think it was on the 15th floor. And we actually walked upstairs, walked inside the room, and it was amazing because it was just a regular room with the twin beds and little table at the end. And I walk in, and Marlon and Jermaine are kind of sitting on this bed, and then Tito and Jackie were on the next bed, and then Michael was just kind of sitting at the table by himself. And that's where I went. And then my friend Malcolm that was with me, he went and talked to the other guys, but I went straight to the table and talked to Michael, which was crazy because Michael was much shorter than, which he ultimately, he grew to be taller than me. Mm-hmm. We're actually the same age. And I wore a leather sweater to try to make myself look like I was a little more important. It was my brother's leather sweater. Mm-hmm. I remember Michael asking me if that was like leather sweater for college or something. And I just, I said, nah. And I actually told him the truth, telling him it was my brother's. And just talked about, what it was like to be him and what's his favorite color. I had whack questions because I couldn't even believe I was in the room.
Right.
And it was amazing. I took a picture, and next day me and Malcolm, we were on the bus, and I showed the picture to some of the girls on the bus, and they started screaming, and they grabbed it, and it got crazy, and the picture got torn up.
Oh, nah, get out of here.
It got torn up. So it was stupid.
First of all, that's award-winning journalism right there, if I ever seen it. What was Michael's favorite color?
I don't even remember.
Oh, man. Now, the great part about this story, obviously, Michael went on and the Jacksons went on to have this incredible legacy. Kenny Edmonds went on to have this incredible legacy also. And you guys actually worked together. You worked a lot with Jermaine. You worked with Michael. Did they remember you when you come back as Babyface? Do they remember this story?
Of course not. They met a million people. And that's what happens is over the years, you meet so many people that you don't, as I'm going to remember that story, he's not going to remember that story. And that's very true even to myself, for those that I might meet along the way. When you meet so many people that it's a little bit more important to them than it is to you at the moment. And it doesn't lessen it. So I was never offended by it at all. And I told him, exactly what happened. It went so well that I actually did it a second time. And so I do have that picture that's outside.
So you had it twice?
I did it twice. So that was like a couple of years later when I was a sophomore. And I at least got the picture opportunity and I have the picture to prove it. Right. But it was actually a couple of years before that I had met him.
Such a great hustle. Man, you've written these like deeply personal records for so many huge artists. What's the process like for you? Like, how do you get to the heart of someone else's matter?
First thing you try to do is, with any artist, and mostly female artists. I usually didn't do it so much with the guys. With guys, I just kind of imagine a situation, and then they would come listen, and that was it. They'd sing the song. But most of the female artists, I would usually, and that usually happened later on. I'd sit and talk to them and kind of get to the essence of who they were, or I'd play something for them, trying to get some kind of emotion out of them, because it allowed me to kind of figure out how to write for them. Maybe in a sense I always kind of did that a little bit, because I kind of think I certainly got to know Pebbles very well, and wrote for her. But the very first song that was written for her was that we placed on her. It wasn't written for her initially. Initially, it was a song that I had written and had a young lady named Deborah Hurd, who was in Damien Dames, and she demoed the song for me way before Pebs had ever heard it. And so that song had become, we were kind of going out there trying to pitch the song, and initially we pitched the song to Vanessa Williams and Ed Eckstein. And we had a couple other songs that were there, and they ultimately, I think there was the way that it happened. I think they had listened to everything that we had, and they were kind of funny about some of the things. And I remember having a funny feeling about not feeling so welcome in that room.
Imagine that.
And so we had made a deal. They made a deal for 3 songs. I think the deal was for 3 songs for 12K, and in fact 12.5, I think, for 3 songs, all in. And so we thought at that point we were like, great, we're gonna make some money and we'll get this song done. Then we went over to MCA and we met with Lil Silas and met with Cheryl Dickerson. When we met with Lil, we talked to Lil about doing Bobby Brown. It was this new kid, well, not a new kid, but a kid from New Edition. He just put out this record, Girlfriend, and they wanted to kind of, work on some more records for his next album. We said we weren't sure at that particular point. Then we met with Cheryl Dickerson, who told us about this group called The Boys.
Down My Heart.
Yeah, Down My Heart. And we said, we'll take a look at that. Then she said, now, this project is really kind of done, but there's this girl I think y'all should meet because I think she's pretty bad. She's pretty talented, and her name is Pebbles. And you should at least go by there. I think she's kind of done with the record, but, at least go check it out. So we went over to the studio where she was, and she was at the studio called Studio Masters, which was on Melrose. And no, it was on Beverly. And when we went in there, our sessions that we had, we just have some water and that was it, or some sodas. And we walked in there, she had a big fruit basket, she had some champagne, and we thought she was rich because she was drinking Asti Spumante. And it was just the whole session was like, dang, who is this chick, and why is she like so rich? And this is her first record. And then she played us Mercedes Boy, and we're like, oh, this is ridiculous. And then she played us another thing, and then before we were walking out, as we were walking out, we started to walk out, and then I said to LA, I said, wait a minute. This is Girlfriend. I said, she is Girlfriend. And he goes, no, we can't do that because we've already placed the song. I said, but I'm telling you, this is Girlfriend. And my motto has always been is the song gets priority. Mm-hmm. The song should go to where is the best home. It's not a question of how much money you're getting. It's a question of who's going to really be able to deliver that record and make the song come alive. And Ellie said, we can't do this. That's not going to happen. And so I kind of suggested it to Pebs anyway. She said, well, let me hear the song. So, we played her the song, and she lost it. She said, I got to have this record. And at that point, Pebs was married to a guy named George Smith. And I don't know what her budget was, but we kind of said, LA said, I don't know that we can give it, and it's not a situation. So we left, and I kind of kept on telling LA, man, I'm telling you, that's who we should go to. And then George Smith got involved, and he said, I heard y'all got this record, and I just heard the record is hot. He said, so what is it y'all getting paid over there for this record? And then we said, well, we're getting, $12.5 for, 3 songs. He said, all right, then I'll give you 15 for 1. And so I told LA, we got to do it. So we snatched the song back. And we, LA had to make that call to Ed Eckstein. And I remember something to the effect where we were right down the street on Highland Terraces here. And we were working in one of the apartments. And LA, so we had Pebs come in to check out a song, and Vanessa had came in to check out a song, and so they kind of had passed each other's way at some particular point. And so when we told Ed Eckstein that Pebs was getting the song, they lost it. Mm-hmm. And they hated us. They hated LA, and they blamed LA for it because they thought LA and Pebs had something going on. Right. They said, I just know I saw something. And so it was kind of a bad thing because like it was really my decision. I made the call, but LA got completely blamed for it. And I think we ran to Ed Eckstein later, and he was cussing LA out, and it was all my fault. But it was a thing of where I kind of chose. I would always choose the song, and it depended on how the song felt and who it was, because I thought "Girlfriend" was Peb's, and so that kind of started the thing. Whenever I would talk to anybody, I kind of want to know who they were and what their vibe was like, because it makes a difference in terms of the song and what kind of song you write for them. So that it started on that page, and I was just kind of learning. But as the years went by, like when I first met Whitney, I took Whitney to my house, and we played her "I'm Your Baby Tonight." Then I played her the song called "Miracle," which after I played the song, she actually had tears in her eyes, and she said to me at that point, "I can't do that song." And I said, "Well, why can't you do it?" She says, "Well, I don't like to do songs that I can't completely relate to." But in my head, I was like, "But you totally related to it." So, but she didn't do the song then, but she ultimately did it later. So it kind of, what I learned from it is that if you kind of spend the time and talk to an artist ahead of time, and it got to a point to where, by the time I meet with an artist, female artist specifically, by the time we finish our talking session, there's tears, from just having conversation about life and broken hearts and everything, because I go in deep just to kind of understand them, and it helps to kind of get a feeling about what to write about. Like Toni Braxton was it was more difficult because Toni was so young that Toni hadn't really been in love yet. She hadn't really had the broken heart and stuff. So it was clearly about her sound, and she was such a kid that she was so detached from the world and the secular world. She didn't know movies. She didn't know anything. I sat down and watched Star Wars with her at my house and stuff, and we became really good friends from the get-go. But in me spending time with her, it also made it easy for me to kind of figure out what to write for her and how to kind of speak in her voice, so to say, as a writer. And that's ultimately what you try to do with every artist. And some artists you can't sit down with and talk to. Mary J. Blige for the Not Gonna Cry.
Not Gonna Cry, that was gonna be my next question.
Well, see, that I had to imagine it. I had to imagine what I thought Mary could say. And I remember having a discussion with Andre Harrell, who,
was that Uptown at the time?
Uptown, yes. And Andre, when he heard Not Gonna Cry, he said, "That's not for Mary."
Wow, really?
His reasoning was, and I understood it to a certain extent, he said, she's not old. She don't have kids. That doesn't relate to her life. And that's when I kind of, my opinion was, well, it's not supposed to be her life. It's someone else's life. And she can be the voice for other people, and that's what she's supposed to do.
And it was also connected to the movie.
It was connected to the movie, yeah. So there was a reason for it, but more importantly, it was a song that other people could, relate to, whether it was her story or not. I didn't know exactly how it would come, but I know that it was a new experience for Mary at the time, because she hadn't really worked with a producer like myself. And we got so lucky, because I think that became Mary's first top 10, pop record.
You could feel the pain in that record, the way she delivered it, whether that was her reality or not. Yeah. One question, because we always laugh at, and it was great because when Mary just lets go, anything comes out. So I was your lover and your secretary.
Yeah.
Did you write out secretary and she just went secretary? Like,
she had a question about that because I wrote it that way. And what's secretary? I said, just trust me, just go with it. And I did it because it just worked better for the rhyme. But everybody accepted it. It was a different experience for me because at that point I hadn't really worked with anybody that was like, that hip hop or from that world.
Because it was and just for anybody watching it now who maybe wasn't around then, or got the records after. Hip hop and R&B was very much separated, and sometimes you would have a rap verse on an R&B record, but a lot of times they would service the record to radio without the rap verse. It was very much church and state at that point, and it hadn't all the way come together, correct. Even in the early to mid '90s.
Correct. So, so it was a new experience for me and a new experience for her as well, and it was great. It worked out great.
It was dope too, because I think a lot of your records and your writing and the way you relate to women, and I really want to applaud you for that, because I think it helped raise also a generation of men hearing these records and feeling like, okay, maybe this is how I should treat a woman. This is how I shouldn't treat a woman. Yeah. A record like Karen White, I'm Not Your Superwoman. I remember my mother loved that record. And, she's talking about, cooking dinner for her man and having his coffee and his breakfast ready, and him still not giving her the love that she feels that she deserves. And then you flip it on, I feel like your record, As Soon As I Get Home, was almost like the yin and the yang to that record, because you're like, hey, baby, I'll wash your clothes, I'll cook your dinner.
The motto was say what women want to hear, right? Period. And, like Superwoman was a record that I was inspired by to write from this group from a long time ago called Fifth Dimension that did this song called One Less Bell to Answer. And it was when they said, one less bell to answer, one less egg to fry. I was like, oh man, it's like it was such conversation, and it made me want to write a song about just having a conversation, and Karen, she killed that record.
When do you know how to keep a record for yourself, for Babyface? I mean, because you have some pretty amazing records. For What Can I See You Again is a dope record. Every Time I Close My Eyes, This Is for the Love of You, Whip Appeal, like. We can go on. There She Goes is one of my favorite records. You and the Neptunes have worked together on that one. You and Pharrell, it was great. When do you know that a record is for somebody else, and when do you know that this record is for Babyface?
Is when I can't do it first. There are some records that I might sing, but I don't feel like it comes alive. And then there are some records like Every Time I Close My Eyes, that initially wasn't for myself. That was initially, I wrote that for Luther.
Oh, wow.
And
rest in peace.
And Luther almost decided to do it. It was a Kenny G record. Kenny G was doing an album, and he asked if I would write something for him and Luther. I said, sure. And so I wrote that. And then we did this over the record plant, and Luther came in and he heard it. He liked the record, but he just didn't want to do it. And I think ultimately he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to do a guest on Kenny G's album.
Right.
And I hated it because I really wanted him to sing that song. And so when he didn't sing that song, then Kenny asked me to sing it. And then I sang it. And then when Tommy Mottola heard the record, he said, you're not giving this to Kenny G. This is your record. And it became this big mess. And then Mariah, heard the record. She loved the record. She said, I got to sing backgrounds on this. It was like, I couldn't believe it. So it was, and that's the kind of thing, sometimes it might not always be for me. It might just be a leftover from somebody else that didn't take the song. So it's hard to make that judgment. I can only tell you that, I sang Into the Road. I did the demo to Into the Road. And when Boyz II Men did it, I knew at that point, I considered keeping Into the Road because I felt it was such a good record. But when they sang it, I was like, wow, this is their record.
Well, they have the cheat code because they could do the harmonies.
Well, I could do the harmonies too, but I'm telling you, it was the way that they sing, the way that Nate opened up that record. And, it was just, that was the first point of me seeing how our chemistry worked, Boyz II Men and myself writing.
So even with yourself, the record took priority, because you could have had an ego, been selfish and said, nah, this is a smash, I'm keeping this. Yeah. But you still gave even bigger than your own ego was the record.
Always. It's always song first, always.
Amazing. I want to go on to LaFace just really quickly. Such a groundbreaking label, Outkast. Yes. One of the greatest hip-hop, arguably the greatest hip-hop group ever. Yeah. One of the greatest musical groups ever. Did you know what you had early on? Did you know they were going to be?
No, LA, I have to give that credit to LA, because LA was, that's where LA was being record company, man. I had no real sense of hip hop and what was great and what wasn't great. And that was something that where LA was like, we got to change with the times, we got to keep growing, and LA was always good with that, and he and that they have to give him that fine. I happened to be blessed that LA was my partner, and he called them and pulled them in.
Right. Again, man, you timeless songs, timeless anthems. Beyonce, best thing I never had. What was that session like? How did that one come together?
That was fun to do because that was the first time I actually was able to go to the studio, and because I had written a song for her before.
And you worked with Destiny's Child in the past?
I didn't work with Destiny's Child. It was with Beyonce, but it was with some other writers, and it got through that way. But so that's the first time I actually went and worked on a few songs, few ideas for her while she'd come in and check it out in that way. And it was very cool to do and very cool to be in her space in that way. Beyonce is, arguably one of the greatest artists we've ever had, with what she can do, how she sings and her star, the way she shines, the way she performs, everything about her, she's just a complete star. And we don't, it's very rare when you get all that all together. When you have somebody that can dance like that and someone that can sing like that and somebody that is as beautiful as that and somebody that's also as sweet as that, that's a nice person. It's very hard to see that actually all come together. And she's one of the rare examples of when that happens.
Have you ever had a studio, and you've been in with all of them, man? I mean, even down to today's stars, Bruno Mars, Ariana Grande, you work with them all. And I really commend you too, because I think as much as Beyonce, Bruno Mars, Ariana are like, pop stars, and, that forward of the floor kind of hit is very necessary. Man, the power ballads, the real love songs that you deliver, balance them out, and really, I think the records that you create is really help people love an artist. You know what I'm saying? And connect.
I think you have to. I give credit to those artists because I don't reach out for them; they reach out for me, and that's so I'm like, honored, in somebody like an Ariana, who's a much younger artist, or even Bruno, who already had hits himself and could easily have, not necessarily called me for anything, didn't need me, but still wanted to just kind of get in there and chop it up, So it's the same as myself when in my growing up, and certain people that I want to get in the room with. I went to get in the room with Stevie Wonder just to be in the room.
And you did?
And I did. Stevie was sat right in that room over there and was singing How Come, How Long. And that was the first time I worked with him in the studio. And I was getting all these nightmare stories, like he never shows up, or he's going to come extra late. He's going to come at 4 o'clock in the morning. And he came on time, and he was telling me, I was listening to him sing. He says, well, so how you want me to sing? What do you want me to sing? I said, well, what am I telling you for? I can't tell you nothing. And he just like, no, whatever you want. Just let me know what you want. And so it was amazing to see someone like him, like you have Stevie Wonder, or you have Quincy Jones. I meet a Quincy Jones and work with a Quincy, and you see that how just regular people that they are, and how huge they are, that they still are like very normal. Yeah. And so it was a lesson to me to always try to stay real to yourself in that way, and be an everyday person. When you get into the room, when you're working with someone, try to sometimes when a young artist or someone new comes in, there is this kind of apprehension that's there, and there's a nervousness that's there, and I'm like always, it's always funny to me because I'm like, it's just me, right. And so it takes a second for us to kind of like get comfortable. Mm-hmm. So like, there's nothing here, but we're all just kind of writing songs and singing and having a good time. So, and try to get the best that we can get.
I was a rep before this interview. I just want to let you know, man, palm sweaty, all of that, man. But you definitely got a way of calming the room and making everybody feel comfortable in your presence as well. What's the craziest studio story that you had? I mean, so Stevie Wonder didn't show up at 4 a.m. Was there something that just went totally haywire one time?
I don't know that there's ever anything that was completely crazy. I used to have challenges with Whitney at times in terms of her getting in the studio at a certain point in our career, our relationship and working. There were times when I would fly out to Jersey to work with her and be inside their studio, and I'd be there, and she wouldn't even show up. All she had to do was walk across the yard, and so I'd fly all the way. Then and I'd call Clive, and Clive said, "Well, if you could just wait another day," and then I'd wait another day, and then it wouldn't happen. Then I'd take off, and then I'd get the call back, "Well, she's ready now," and then and can you come back and do it? And so, and I would do it. I just kind of made that. I bent for her in that sense. I didn't do that for everybody. David Foster, he was like, "I'm not doing that." He's he wasn't gonna bend like that. But for me, there was I always wanted Whitney to win.
Right.
So I was always honored that I was in the room with her. To hear her from the first time where she sang "I'm Your Baby Tonight," and she sung it so quick and said she wanted to finish it quickly because she wanted to go to the mall. So it was just amazing to be in the presence of greatness. And when you have that opportunity, I pinch myself many times about my life and the people I've met and the people I've worked with, the fact that I've been in the room with them, the fact that I can say that I was in the room and worked with Aretha Franklin, that I can say I worked with Barbra Streisand, to an Eric Clapton, to it's just so many people that I've been able to kind of work with that it's I have to pinch myself to think, for that kid that make the prank call, so to say, to Charles Williams, how that happens. And it keeps happening, because just when you think you have done it all, then you'll get a call from someone. Like last year or so, a couple of years ago, I got a call from Johnny Mathis.
Wow.
To work with Johnny. So I did music on Johnny Mathis, and so it doesn't ever really kind of stop. And I'm just excited as to work from a Johnny Mathis art to go and I just did some work with Daniel Caesar.
Yeah.
So it's constant. It's the thing about being an artist and being a writer is that you don't really ever have to stop. It's as long as you stay true to the art and try to stay relevant in terms of what the music is and what people are listening to and how they listen, and you're coming from a heart space, then there's always that possibility. And if I were to say anything, my real blessing has been is that I've been able to stay in this business and relevant for a while because younger artists have reached out for me to work with them. So it allows me to kind of stay young and stay in the business.
Absolutely. You had mentioned Whitney, and obviously you had a close relationship, a friendship, a great working relationship. And I wanted to ask you about this thing and get your feelings on it because it hurt a lot of people recently. Kanye West's artist, Pusha T, and Kanye West had decided to use an old picture of Whitney's bathroom for their album cover. Did you catch wind of this story at all? And
I don't know exactly what the complete story is, but from what I understand, they took a picture of the bathroom.
It was a paparazzi photo of the picture of the bathroom and looked the wreck. There were like drug paraphernalia in the picture. So, it was Whitney not at her highest point. And she wasn't in the picture, but it was the picture of the bathroom and that was the album cover. I know Bobby reacted very passionately about how he was against it. A lot of people were against it. And
yeah, look, it was a part of her history. It's something that actually happened. And the truth is, you can't whitewash it. It was real, and it's something that actually happened. And if that picture may stop another young artist from going down that road, then I would hope it that way, because you can't close your eyes and act like it didn't happen,
Right.
and put someone on a pedestal and only leave them on the pedestal. You have to accept everything that was part of them, and so in that sense, no, I can't say that it was. Maybe it was in bad taste, but at the same time, it was a reality, and a reality that is kind of a warning sign to younger artists, is that that's what can happen. This is what can happen if you go down that road.
That's an interesting take. Thank you for weighing in on that. Yeah. Real quick, and just a couple more questions. Obviously, you're a legend in music and a legend in the rap world. Worked a little bit. We just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the Carter 3 Lil Wayne's album, and you actually worked with Kanye West, produced the record. You sung Uncomfortable and with Lil Wayne. How did that come to? I did not see that coming.
I didn't see it coming either. It kind of just happened, and so it was a record that I did with Kanye, and then next thing I know, that Lil Wayne had cut it. So I still haven't, physically been in a studio with Lil Wayne, which, I love the work that he did on that record, and so it'll be, he's one person that I still would actually, like to do the actual work with at some point.
And you also worked with Jay-Z at a turning point in his career when he was an underground artist at the time. Reasonable Doubt was an independent record. He didn't have any real hits outside of the rap world. And Sunshine was kind of the first glimpse that we got of Jay-Z as a potential pop star who now has a 25-year career.
Yeah. I got a call from Andre Harrell and from, I think, Jeff Burrows at the time. They said that, because I wasn't really that familiar with Jay-Z. But they told me that he was a cool guy, a great artist, and that he wanted me to do this vocal, and I was honored that he thought of me, and so it was fine. And I had no sense of what that record would turn into, how big of an artist he would become. It was just one of those things that I just kind of I did with based off of people recommending this is a good, cool guy, and you should do it.
And it's funny, Jay did at the time catch a lot of heat for that record because it was such a departure from where he was at. But when you look back in hindsight, it was like it was a necessary departure for him to start thinking himself in a bigger way than just underground rap.
Many times when you're in the presence of genius, you don't realize it. Yeah. And they have an insight that everybody doesn't understand at the same time, and so and it just takes time for you to see it. So there are it's not always as clear, and nor is it as traditional as we look at Stevie Wonder and say we know Stevie Wonder's a genius. Well, the same thing in the hip hop world is there are guys that put tracks together and put music together and that feel good as any copyright that any of us could write. So, you have to give credit where it's due.
You've done so much work, and you have so much more to go with Vibes Music. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes, and like the new songwriters that get birthed out of this new venture that you're doing. When it's all said and done, when you finally do get to just like look back and celebrate or marvel at what you've done, I know you're always looking forward. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to say about Babyface?
The good thing about the Good Vibes Music is, regardless of whether we ultimately find someone that we actually sign, is that in the process of it, for those writers that are there and everyone that comes in, they get a chance to sit and talk about music and talk about the writing and the how to write and what to write, and even while we're doing that, we have mentors that come in. Because we had Luke Laird and Ashley Gorley in Nashville come down, and here we had James Fauntleroy come through, and it was it's the kind of thing that I feel proud about, knowing that I connected those writers with an experience that that will hopefully stay with them the rest of their lives, and they use it as part of it. I didn't get that opportunity to kind of go sit in a room with writers like that in the beginning, and that kind of might have helped me avoid some mistakes that I might have made just in terms of writing and how to approach writing. Ultimately, in the end, you know, when it's all over, I just want people to, you know, look at my career with the music and everything, but to be able to say nice things about me, who I was as a person, and that I helped them by virtue of how I, you know, lived my life, and being a person that cares, and that, you know, that he was a good guy, and that works for me.
That's dope. Well, we can honestly say that by sitting here with you today. Real quick, man. Last thing I wanted to get into this little game we play called Record Break. Yes. So this is just rapid fire questions. So this is the first thing that comes to your mind. Try not to think about it too much. Okay. It's fun. There's no right, wrong answer. But, you know, I just want to get into it. Okay. What's the record you're most proud of? Tough questions, too. They're not easy questions.
Record I'm most proud of. I don't know that I have an answer for that. It varies on days. There's certain records that I hear sometimes that I hear the Aretha Franklin record that I did on the Waiting to Exhale thing. Didn't become a big hit, but the way that she sang the record and the way it makes me feel, I'm like, I can't believe I was a part of that. Mm-hmm. But then I'll think the same thing about doing a record with one of the records with Tony Braxton in the beginning. Or I'll think the same thing about, then I'll switch to another one, you know. So it's so, I can't really, I think maybe that record still hasn't been made yet.
Okay. That's real. What was the hardest record you ever had to write?
Hardest record ever generated. It was hard writing the Waiting to Exhale stuff. It was not just one record, it was all those records. It was because I had to work with Forrest Whitaker and looking at the movie and trying to figure out what to say and how to say it, and then I had to get approval from Whitney in terms of what artists would actually sing it. So it was, my hands were tied a little bit in terms of trying to be creative. So that was a hard record to write.
The easiest record that you had to write, the record that kind of just came out the fastest?
Probably The Day. The song The Day that came out.
About your son,
I wrote it, yeah, in 15 minutes, I think so.
That's amazing. It's such a beautiful record. Is there a record that you didn't write but wish you wrote?
There's a bunch of those. I don't know if that's, I think a better thing was what record blew me away when I first said it. I wish I wrote it, but what record I think changed the way I looked at music was Teddy Riley's, when he wrote Keith Sweat, I Want Her.
Ooh, I wanna, because that was the beginning of New Jack Swing. Yeah. It was a real.
And that came out and that blew me away. And I said, oh my God, where's that coming from? And how's that happening? And so that was all part of, you know, so when we were writing Every Little Step and Don't Be Cruel, we had to think, dang, we got to compete with that. Mm-hmm. And it didn't seem so. I kind of like ran the other way instead of ran towards it because he just, you know, he was amazing. I thought that was amazing.
Mm-hmm. And as though, you know, working with Bruno too, you had said that you just felt grateful that he wanted to call you in and work with you. You know, it's no secret that Bruno was inspired by that era of music that we're talking about right now, the Teddy Riley, the Babyface, the L.A. Reid era of music, the New Jack Swing. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were in that mix as well. So it makes perfect sense why he would call the Babyface to work on his 24 carat, you know.
Well, look, Bruno's a songwriter. Right. And so that's why, and he's always been a songwriter, and he's an amazing songwriter in the sense of how many genres he's able to touch. Right. And the truth is, I'm inspired by his writing, and I listen to him. I steal from him as he steals from me.
And then, who's the one artist that you haven't written for, but you feel like you could deliver an incredible record right now? Doesn't have to be a hit. An incredible record, just a real powerful record.
Yeah, and that's hard to say. I think that I'm not one to talk about what I can deliver in terms of whether I can deliver a hit or anything, but I think just in my life, there's artists that I wish I would have had the chance to work with. I wish I would have been in the studio with Marvin Gaye. Wish I could have been in the studio with him. That experience would have been amazing, I think. And I think that we could have done something special. I wish I could have, and maybe one day still, I still wish I could have worked with Sade. So I think, that voice is just unbelievable. Her voice is just crazy. So, and there's probably there's a number of other artists that I think of, but initially those are the first two that come to mind.
I'm gonna put down Universe. Sade, know you're watching. Needs to have it. Finally, man, last thing, man, I just need you to finish this sentence for me. Anything you want to set the record straight on, just finish the sentence. For the record.
For the record, I don't have anything I have to set straight. It is what it is. So if you think it might not be true, but what doesn't matter.
And you heard it from the man himself, Kenny Babyface Edmonds, man. Thank you, man. Truly a genius, man. Thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it.